Okay, we've got a few announcements tonight. Just a reminder that we're starting the meetings going forward, including tonight at 6:45, so that we can get out of here at a more convenient time for the Shriners. There will be no show and tell next month because we have an election. Superstar Weekend, we now have 20, it's actually 21 now, and I'll walk over here and talk about that a little bit. He's going to be making a bending jig, some veneering, making a curved front drawer, adding details and inlay, and finishing it. And I had a question from one member that said, is this just a presentation or is he really going to be in front of us doing woodworking? And it's the latter. This is really a production operation that he's going to be doing. So it ought to be a pretty good show. There is going to be one membership raffled off tonight. We're planning a swap meet at Faust Park for mid-May. Stay tuned for a specific date. Elections for officers will be next month. And please, I know we had everybody holding off on toys because the hospitals weren't taking as many, but at this point that we have some other organizations that are willing to take toys. So anybody that's in the toy making business, put the pedal to the metal and let's produce toys again. The revised bylaws for the Guild have now been published on the website. Those revisions were made about a year ago and just hadn't been put on the website, but they're on the website now for anybody that's interested. New members and visitors, I think we have quite a few tonight. If you're a new member or a visitor, would you please stand up?
Dave Christoph.
What kind of woodworking do you do, Dave?
I'm a scroller. I do scroll saw work. If you'd like to see some of it, I have it on my phone. I can show you, but that's what I do.
Well, what we want you to do is bring some to show and tell in a couple months. There
You're on. Okay.
Fair enough.
Keith Cruson, part of West County Woodcarvers, just here to see how things work. Wood carving and a little bit of small furniture.
I'm Larry Keller, president of the West County Woodcarvers. Keith is also our treasurer, and we're here to support Glenn and Steve Bodkin. They're here demonstrating or talking about wood carving tonight. So I'm also a member of the Belleville Midwest Woodcarvers. So, and at one time I did belong to the St. Charles Woodcarvers. So us woodcarvers get around. So do their tools after they leave this earth, but thank you.
Jeff Schaefer. I predominantly do drum building, so I'm an instrument builder, but I also teach out at St. Louis University High School. So I run the woodworking class and woodworking club out there as well.
All right. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Nicholas Forrest. I'm visiting first time today. I live out in Wentzville. Moved there about 3 years ago. Got my house set up with actually had a basement shop. So kind of just getting into, I was into woodworking a lot in high school before college, but then got focused on my career. So I haven't really been doing anything for the last 10, 15 years. But I got back into it the last couple of years after getting to build a shop. So I'd say I do furniture and small trinkets and things for right now, but I want to do a whole lot more. I'm just acquiring tools. So
great, thank you. Upcoming classes. There are shorty classes coming up for the router table, the edge sander, and the disc sander. That's all one class on the 25th. There is a sharpening class on April 1st. and a salt and pepper shaker turning class on the 15th. There's a bowl turning class that didn't get printed right. Hopefully the bowl will turn out better than that. There's a shorty class coming up on the drill press, and all the shorty classes start at 8 a.m. in the morning. That happens before open shop, and it's a monitor who's going to work the 9 a.m. shift. On the first and third Fridays, including tomorrow, the Christmas toy build group will meet from 10 to 2. 2 weeks ago, we cut up a bunch of pipe organ pipes that varied in size to about my size or taller, and some smaller ones. And they all looked like they were really made out of good wood. It's too bad they couldn't be recycled as another organ. The Superstore weekend, like I said a minute ago, this is a hands-on presentation, and Tom McLaughlin will be building the table as he speaks to us. On April 30, there is a Rockwood toy build on Sunday. The Rockwood program has been eliminated by the teacher at Rockwood, so we have about 100 toy kits that were put together for the kids over at Rockwood, the fourth graders, to assemble. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a group of members in this class assemble these, and then these go into the toy program. There is a class on hand planing techniques on May 6th, so that you can learn how to get the most out of your hand plane. I think he is going to cover several different kinds of planes, and he's going to also talk about how to disassemble and reassemble and sharpen and all that technical stuff. There is another fundamentals class starting in July, and the fundamentals class has a prerequisite that you're familiar with the power equipment in the shop. And since we have a lot of new members who are not familiar with that, we offer a beginner's woodworking class ahead of the fundamentals class. And what we do there is provide close supervision for people that aren't familiar with using the equipment. And all the students there will be building 2 different projects. So it gives them an opportunity to use a variety of stuff in the shop. What I've found is that in the fundamentals class, if there are students in there who are not familiar with using the power equipment, they're a little cautious, and they tend to fall behind on their project. So this is an attempt to get over some of that. Upcoming presentations. In April, there'll be a bowl turning presentation by TJ Thayer, and he's actually going to bring a lathe in and turn it here on stage. So if you come, you get to sweep up too. The Superstore weekend, we've now got this in 3 slides, but that should be a good thing, and we need some more people to sign up. We've only got 21 right now. Some business that we have to transact is our current board positions are the president, held by Brian Ellison, and his term ends in 23, and he's going to retire. And I'm up here tonight because he's not feeling well. I'm vice president, my term ends, and I threw my name in the hat to run again for next year. Same thing, Adam Connors is secretary. His term ends, but he's going to put his name in the hat to run another year. And the treasurer, Tom Tierney, has been doing this a long time, and he's ready to retire. And we have 4 directors. The director's position is one that runs for 4 years, and it's a rotating ladder assignment. So one guy rolls off this year. Don Turner is ending his 4 years, and he's going to retire. But Dan Lender, Jay Knopfinger, and Hal Donovan continue on. So then we're on to some nominations. For president, the nominating committee nominated Jay Knopfinger, and he's willing to serve. I said I'm willing to serve again. Adam Connors is willing to serve. Joe Turner has volunteered to serve as the treasurer going forward. And to fill the vacancy on the director's position, the nominating committee is nominating Jason Sankovich. Additional candidates will be accepted from the floor either tonight, if you want to nominate somebody, but we would ask that before you nominate somebody, you talk to them and verify that they're willing to serve. And also, we will be accepting additional nominations next month when we have the election. Let's do show and tell then. Who signed up for that?
I'm Wayne Humphrey, and I'm
Thank you
heading
for
up to
putting your
Christmas
name
toy
in the hat.
build. As Bill said,
For the
the
director.
Salvation Army's looking for a bunch of toys this year, and I'm sure they can easily absorb anything that we can possibly build. It's a big organization. And I just wanted to show you some of the little things that we're going to be building and give you an idea of what you can be doing at home. Doesn't require a lot of finesse, doesn't require a lot of materials for the most part. Here's a 2x4 boat. Just cut them out, stack them up. You don't need to paint them. We can paint them or we can supply them unpainted. We got some little animals for kids to play with. We can put a string on the front of them, turn them into a pull toy, like the little rabbit right here. That's something easy to build. We can supply you with the wheels. And kids like little boxes, so there's some nice little boxes up here, some nice big boxes, but this is just simply a piece of hardwood that's been cut out, a Forstner bit, put a piece of exotic wood on the top, used an axle peg for a hinge, and kids like that because they can put their secret stuff in there and hide it from mom and their little sister type thing. So lots of different options you can do with toys. If you need some ideas, whatever, see me. And we're building toys out at Faust Park every first and third Friday of the month from 10 to 2. So come on out if you got some time.
All right. So you guys know about the Home Sweet Home table program. This is probably my third or fourth. Every time it gets a little bit easier, a little bit easier, a little bit easier. And so this one is just a pretty basic table, crisscross legs. I use the figure 8 fasteners underneath to fasten to the top. That's a really handy little way of doing things. It really compensates when your legs aren't quite square or flat and the table rocks on top. Those figure 8s just solve that problem for you. So it's really, I love them. I bought a big bag of them on Amazon, so it works really great. And then I rounded off the legs on the outside, but left the insides kind of flat and square, so it gave it a unique look. And I stained it with some Minwax gunstock color, put a little bit of poly on top and some finishing paste on the top of that, and that's all it took. So we're at about 88 though. We need to get to 100 really quickly. So if you have some lumber, put some time in, knock it out on a Saturday, or it only takes a couple of days to put these little things together. They're pretty fat, they go together good. They're easy to work with. And we really want to hit 100 for Home Sweet Home. Tom, I don't know when our target goal is for that. Is that this month, do we think?
At the end of the month, yes.
End of the month, so we're really close.
Beginning of the program.
Yeah, so we want to hit 100 for that year anniversary. That's the big deal. So big push. If anybody's got some white oak from Home Sweet Home laying in their stock, ready, waiting for that project, and if you need that divine intervention, let me just make that call to action for you and make a table. Let's hit 100 by the end of the month, okay? So thank you, guys.
Hi, I brought these 2 boxes in. They are veneered boxes. The veneers on them are between a 42nd and a 64th inch. This larger box has a Babinga 4-way matched, mirror matched insert and a border around it. This was a project that was in one of Paul Schursch's videos. I've got a double series video that he produced that I had watched a couple times. This is mounted on a 1/2-inch Baltic birch substrate, and it was glued up in Don Snyder's old vacuum bag that I bought about a year before he passed. This other box actually is my first marquetry piece that I've done. My dad had passed about a year ago, and in a conversation with one of my sisters, she reminded me that our mother did not have a place to put. We all got a small tube of ashes from Dad's cremation, and my dad served in the Navy for 6 years, and he has several patches and pins and things like that. So I decided to do a memorial pictorial piece. Dad spent, after he left the Navy, his career working for a power plant as an electrician. And so I started looking around at cartoonish type pictures and saw something similar to the scene that I produced, which is 6 by 6 inches. It's a landscape with a winding road and then a couple power towers. And I used a method called the window method for marquetry, and these pieces were so thin that to glue them together was quite difficult. And when it came time to do the power lines and have them overlap, it was impossible to do. So I went ahead and mounted this to my 1/2-inch backer, and then I inlaid for the power lines like you would do with standard inlay. And then I had another problem. I had dyed black some light colored wood that I had, and the dye didn't go all the way through when I cut the stringing to go in the channels. So I ended up darkening it with the Sharpie marker, and my finish is shellac, and you can imagine the shellac solvent is alcohol, and alcohol dissolves marker. And so I'll just finish by saying I found after it ran somewhat, and I was really minimally brushing because I knew it might be a problem, I went and got a can of spray shellac, Zinsser. I've never used it before. I'm the guy that did the shellac talk at the end of last year, and I stood back and I floated it over the top, super light coats. And I built that up, and I had no problem once I got that built up enough, and I moved away from brushing. So if anybody has interest in marquetry, I'm kind of beginning. I've got several books. This was a really cool project, and I'd be interested to talk to anybody here if they've tried it or they have special interest. And last thing real quick, I'm doing the bowl class to 26. There's 3 people signed up. We usually do 4, so I believe there's 1 spot if anybody wants to do it. Usually I've done that a few times already. It's fun, and I'd like to, us to have 4 people, so think about that. Thank you.
My name's David Gronefeld, and one of the things I like about the Guild is the wide range of experience and expertise that the Guild members have. I've taken several classes through the Guild. I took the fundamentals class with Wayne Watson, and I made a tool tote and a tool chest. I've taken the turning class with Brad with the bowl turning, and it sounds like Brad may be also doing a marquetry class sometime in the future as well. But the expertise is something I really enjoy. I like working with Dan Coleman, who knows everything about the machinery and is an excellent resource for that. I've taken a couple other classes too, but they're slipping my mind. A hand plane class I took as well, and I took a class with John, who's got some projects up here with doing the epoxy. So all those things were really important, or really enjoyable for me. And the latest class I took was Jay's class making the shaker boxes. So I would encourage everyone to take the classes. I got 3 shaker boxes that nest when we were done. And they're still together, Jay. I haven't finished them yet. There's no finish on them, but I'm very happy. I was the only one in the class, so I had Jay's full attention, which I enjoyed. But I would encourage people to take as many classes as you can. Fortunately, I was able to, since I was the only one there, Jay let my daughter come, so she was actually able to come, and she helped drill some of the holes and hold some things while I was pegging it. So it was a real nice experience, and I want to thank Jay for inviting her and letting her kind of come and just hang out for a while. And she didn't seemed to do really well, spending a whole day doing dad stuff.
What was the cost of the class? What did you pay?
Oh, I don't even remember what the cost class. Jay, what is the cost of the class?
I got a 40% discount from the manufacturer of these things. So really, it was only $25 bought all the material for doing the set of 3 boxes. And then there was the usual charge for...
Yeah, it was $30 or $40.
Yeah, so $45 was, I think, the price, but Jay got a discount, so he naturally pocketed the rest of that money.
That's a typical cost of
Yeah.
a class, right?
Right.
25
right.
to $30.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're real reasonable. Yeah, and I signed up for John's class at I think the day before it, because I wanted to do some epoxy. I work at the park, and we wanted to do some epoxy, and that was one of the things I was trying to figure out how to do, and I turned around, oh, there's class right there. Holy cow. And so John was even nice enough to come out and help us with our project when we did that. So take advantage of the courses that we have. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dan Linder, and I'm making a mission-style bed for my wife. And so after I designed it, I thought it'd be appropriate to build a prototype, at least of one leg. And one of the things that makes this bed unique is that none of the hardware that attaches the rail to the foot and headboard will be exposed. So this is what I came up with. It took 3 jigs to make this joint, but this is a cover plate that will hide the hardware after it's installed. But there's a grade 8 bolt that goes through a tenon that's going to be permanently attached to the leg. Here is a concentric double mortise that goes into the leg, in which this the rail goes into a tenon. It'll have a captured, this is a weld nut that'll capture on that'll take this bolt that's behind this cover plate, and then I've used dovetailed the slats that hold the box spring and the mattress up. I'm going to have a number of slats, and those will be dovetailed into the rail also. And then, bear with me. I can't. I will not use screws in the production. I'm going to use hidden dowels. Dowels will help me for alignment. I can't get that apart. What I was going to attempt to show you is there's a spline in here holding the corbel to the leg. So here I have 2 tenons going into the leg, And I chose to put this spindle strip. I can make these in pairs so they'll match the upper and the lower. This will save me from making 124 mortises to hold the spindles. So, Tom, if you could you help hold this? Hold the leg.
Hold the leg. Which one, the right one or the left one? I think that's.
I got it.
Got it.
I got it too tight. There we go. So I wanted to, here's what I wanted to show you. It's just this corbel uses a spline to get a better gluing surface to hold those on there. Anyway, so there's a number of pieces, but thank you.
Dan, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Can you describe the techniques you're using to make your mortise and tenon and to make your dovetails?
Yes. So that's a little different too than what most people do. To make my mortises, I built, I've never seen one like it, but I built a mortising jig. And so on the front, I wish I had it here, on the front of it, I use those micro jig clamps that use a dovetail. And so if you can envision, that holds it in a plane like this. And then I use a router, and I have back here, I have a parallel guide that the router guide goes into. So all I got to do is mark the cross hatches, and I plunge, route, come up, and I clean that out, and then I go to the next one. So they're all in the same distance from your reference surface. And so that way, then if you have, on like the nightstand that I built, it had different thicknesses of materials. You could use a shim, and it's always the same distance from your reference, regardless how thick your material is. So if you have, say, from the left side to the right side, if the material is not the same thickness, it doesn't matter because you're always coming off a reference surface. So that's what I use to put in these mortises. And I found that for me, when I call these round mortises, and off a mortar machine, I call them square mortises just for talk and or for ease of conversation. I make then my tenons, because I have a round mortise, I make my tenons round. And that's easy for me. Yes, you lose some of your glue surfaces, but most of it's ingrain. So ingrain has very little strength. So I'm not concerned about that. Particularly, I have a lot of surface here. So that I have plenty of surface to keep that on there. Then for these dovetails, that you talking about just this dovetail or any dovetail?
Any of them.
Oh, well, when I'm making a drawer, I don't cut my dovetails by hand. I make them look like I cut them by hand, but I use a table. I have another jig, and I use a table saw. I have a table saw blade. It's cut to a special grind. Mine's 10 degrees, and I got to my second set of dovetails came out, if I have to say so, pretty darn good. So, you know, it doesn't take much if you get the special grind blade, and I could maybe show that someday, but
Okay.
I had good results.
Where'd you get it ground?
I got mine from, was it? Yeah, Quinn, W.D. Quinn in St. Anne. And a little story on that. So Forstner sells special grind blades, dovetail blades. They wanted $185 in 6 months. Quinn wanted $119 in 3 days. So that's a big difference. But this dovetail is just cut with the table saw to go into this socket here. And that is cut using a flush cut router bit. So, thank you.
What wood are you using? How are you going to finish it?
Okay, this is prototype. It's just poplar, so this won't get finished. So you know, poplar. Poplar is a very stable wood. It's it's the cheapest hardwood that you can have. So I only use poplar or more like, I don't use pine is what I'm trying to say when I build anything. I use poplar because it's stable and it just machines beautiful. But I'm making the bed out of white oak, a quarter sawed white oak. And but if you don't see me again, you know I created expensive scrap. Thank you.
Anyways, my name's John Ferreira, and it's a bowl, actually a vase I made out of I think it was pine root ball. I found it by the side of the road, so I couldn't tell you exactly what it was. It's still got some sap coming out of it, but it's got, I rough turned it. Well, first I dried it in a vacuum oven, then I rough turned it, and then I set the thing on fire. Totally charred it. Then I wire brushed all the char off and did the epoxy, and then did the final turning. So that gives you all the black lines and coloration is from the char. And then a little epoxy work on the top. It was actually supposed to be red up here too, but when I did the first pour, it sunk down in there, and when it came out of the pressure pot, I did a second pour with the clear, with a little bit of smoky looking stuff in there. And then this was a box elder blank, and the dark spot here was all termite damage. This was all dust. And I did a quick stabilizing with, I use BVV as a company that makes it. It's like cactus juice, but a lot better. And I only did it for like 20 minutes. So it only darkened where the wood was either gone or punky or powdery. And that give you, I like the color variation in it. And then I did a little epoxy ring on the top. If you look at it close, it looks like rock crystals in there. That's actually dyed bath salts. But anyways, there it is.
So the next is our presentation. Come up, did you get a mic?
Yes.
Good. The stage is all yours.
Thank you.
And I will retreat without falling.
Thank you for having us here and inviting us and letting us come and talk with you and be at your meeting and hopefully try to tell you a little bit about our wood carving and what we do and the organization and everything. So this is St. Charles Area Woodcarvers, and I'm Glenn Miller, and Steve is here with me, and let's see if I can make this work. I've been carving, I'm the president of the St. Charles Area Woodcarvers. I've been carving 26 or plus years. These are some of my carvings on display, and then I have some of them with me tonight. What got me started was was at Silver Dollar City and saw a pair of praying hands, and I thought it was just beautiful. And from that, my wife said, if I buy you a beginning kit and a book and stuff, would you do that? And that got me started, and over the years, I got more into it, and then she became a carver as well, and we did this together. And if you look on my shirt here, this is the Houston Area Woodcarvers. I was 20 years down there with the Houston Area Woodcarvers, the Galveston County Woodcarvers, and the Texas Woodcarving Guild. And then I came back here to the club that I had started in the late 90s. So that's moved back and came back to the St. Charles Area Woodcarvers Club, and then later became the president. And Steve is the secretary and webmaster. Now, this is Steve Bodkin is really his alias. He's out of season, so he uses his alias. Anything to add, Steve?
That's good
Well, Steve's been carving, what, a year and a half?
Year and a half.
And so he does some fine work, and he's very active in the club, obviously, and takes a lot of classes and stuff that we'll talk about, and part of it. And with us tonight is his wife, Valerie, who is also part of the club. And as a club, we have a charity that we do each year, and we raffle off tickets for it. And she is in charge of that this year, and we're making a gnome village. And that's going to be a very interesting piece, and we're just starting to get the pieces made, and everything's starting out, and see where we go. We're excited this year that we've changed our location. We now meet in the Weldon Springs Interpretive Center, which is the reclamation site from out of Weldon Springs. So it's a brand new building. First year it's open. It's got a great facility. It's got fantastic lighting for us, and gives us a lot of opportunities to do things that we haven't been able to do before. We can have class. Before we were out of school, so we were limited when we could have openings and everything, and now we can have classes during the day, we can have them on weekends, we have our meetings at night, and so gives us a lot more opportunity, and we're seeing a good number of additions to our group already, so excited about that. And this is where it's located. We're at room number 3. We meet there on Wednesdays, 6:30 to 8:30. We actually carve while there, and we have meetings 2 days, or 2 of those Wednesdays a month, and the others are open carving. And we also have, on every Monday from 9 to 11, we have carving at the Senior Center in St. Charles. And we have some of our cards over here that will tell you our times and locations and all of that information, and website, right? So this is our website. Welcome to the club. This shows last year's charity, which was a friendship cane, which all the members made a block and put it together, and it was for Crisis Nursery, and they were very excited about that. In here we also tell a little bit about our club. We have things where all of our members can put their projects, and we have under each member, and we have club projects and monthly projects and all of those things which we show and display on there. But so that's kind of an introduction of who we are and some of the types of things that we do. And officers, myself, Connie, Charles, and Steve, and directors, and so that's how we're set up. So what we're going to talk about tonight, this is a kind of a special handout from Woodcarving Illustrated, one of the magazines for wood carving, and it kind of talks about the things that we're going to cover tonight. Got a lot of things to cover because I want to try to hopefully introduce you to some things that maybe you didn't think about as part of wood carving, something different or something interesting or something that you say, how can I do that how can I put that into what I want to do? So so it talks about cuts. Stop cut, paring cut. Let's see. Since I can't see that one over there. we'll, yeah, push cut and V cut. Carving tools we'll talk more about, and we'll talk more about the cuts. All types of carving tools. Power carving, we're going to kind of limit our discussion on that. We're going to keep it pretty much to hand carving tonight. I've got a power carver up here, and I've got one little example of some power carving, but that's not going to be our main topic tonight. We want to talk about some sharpening. We want to talk about keeping the sharp and the types of wood and everything, including some of the things that are unusual and you might not think of as carving, but pyrography. Everybody know what pyrography is? Wood burning. And we use it for sometimes as part of the making the piece that we're doing, and sometimes by itself. So, safety first. Gloves. At the club and everything, we always wear a glove on the holding hand, and this one happens to be Kevlar. There's all kinds of gloves, there's all types of things, and some of us like to wear aprons and stuff, and that's another good safety thing. I've had a friend that he was carving and didn't have his apron on, was wearing, down in Texas, wearing shorts, and he dropped the knife. Fortunately, didn't try to catch it, but it did get his leg. He had to have stitches, so he went to the hospital, and when he got there, they called the police because it was a knife wound. Okay, thumb guard. I make my own out of some safety tape, but there's also leather tapes, or leather guards and everything. Those leather thumb guards and finger guards are much the same as you'll find in a quilting store for hand sewing. So, and that's the safety tape that I use to make my own thumbs. And then sometimes Steve, let's see, you got tape around your glove, Steve?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Steve always cuts through his glove, so he has to tape it.
I'm notorious for cutting through and slicing through my gloves, so got to have my tape.
Okay, so first aid, you got to have your first aid kit. And here's what's in mine. Band-Aids, of course, pepper, and super glue. You say, pepper? Helps with coagulation. If you're doing power carving, you need a air filter. You don't need to be breathing all that. In most places that if you go to instructions or a group where you're doing power carving, they require this. And the other thing you need, cell phone, just to call 911 just in case. Okay, tools. Start with knives. I've seen all kinds of knives used. I've seen everything from box cutters to fish fillet knives being used for carving. Now, don't ask me why or what the advantage of those two things are. I couldn't tell you. But some people have tried to carve with them. Some with success, some not so much success. So, a lot of different knives, and you'll see that I have quite an assortment. And why different ones? What's the difference? Well, blade length, handles, you know, and what some of them are thinner, some of them shorter, and some of them, the width of the blade, the spine of the blade, and the strength of the blade, some are very thin or make them flexible, some are stiffer, make them very stiff. Now why the difference? I mean, what's the advantage? Well, if you're doing what we call roughing out, taking large amounts of wood, you're probably going to want a harder, bigger knife, and you take more wood off at a time. If you want to get into very thin places, you may want a different knife than that. You may want something very thin if you're trying to carve the very slight area between the eyelid and the eyeball, which they all worked on last weekend at one of our classes. And so you're probably not going to do that with your biggest knife unless you have to. So it's just those types of things. Right knife, right tool. But one of the interesting things is they kind of divide knives up into two groups, rough out and detail. Whoops, I hit the wrong thing there. Now, this knife, big handle, big long blade, that's a rough out knife. So is that one. So is that one. Now, per the manufacturer. Now, exactly why he labeled that as a rough out knife, but he did, and that was my first good custom knife that I bought, and I love that. And one of the things about that knife is when I got that from him, he said, never strop my knife more than 3 times on each side when you need to refresh it. And we'll talk about stropping and sharpening in a little bit. I've had that knife 24 years. I've never had to sharpen it again other than when I dropped it and nicked the tip of it. But other than that, whenever I've stropped it, I've only done it 3 times, and it's still super sharp. So, what does that mean? These knives all have different materials. They're made, different compounds, different things that they're made from. Normally around a 59 or 60 Rockwell, so they're hard enough to be very rigid, hold the edge, but not so hard that they're brittle. Of course, there's other things besides the knives as well. When you get into bigger carvings, we get into the full-size gouges and mallet tools. And when you're doing that, typically hold it. This is a carving screw. Hold it in the piece. Put this on 2x4 or something that has a... Yeah.
I forgot you had it upside down.
Yeah, half of those go one way, half of them the other way, see? And so there's actually 2 sets of full-size mallet tools there. And what's the difference between them? One of them is quite a bit cheaper than the other one. The other one's top quality, top price. What's the difference? Well, both of them are relatively good steel, but the higher priced one is better steel. But the other one is, it doesn't come sharp. You have to sharpen it. The higher priced ones come sharp. So, it's kind of beware. If you're comfortable and know all about the sharpening, and there's there's tricks to sharpening carving tools why you can do it and save some money, but it's one of the big things about carving is, and we'll talk more about that, and then the palm tools. So these are smaller tools, fit in your palm. Steve's got a set of them there. And they're different sizes and different things. Now, if you look down here, always hitting the wrong button here. These palm tools, as well as the large tools, they typically, the good ones, some of the lesser brands don't, but the good ones have numbers on them. And the numbers start from 1 through 11, and then there's more numbers on that beyond that, but those become into specialty things. The only ones that I can remember off the top of my head are the 1 through 9, the 11, and 12. 1 through 9 starts with, 1 is flat, just straight, like a knife would be. 11 is like a U, completely big U, big out. And then we have a V tool, which is 12. And so you have these, that's one number on them, and then sometimes they have a second number, sometimes they don't, and that's the millimeters of how wide it is. So how wide you want to, from 1 millimeter up to big, 25, 50 millimeters. So a lot of different manufacturers. Carving knives are hard to get right now. Helvey is the probably the #1 out there, and if you were to put an order in right now, you'll probably have what, a 6-month waiting period?
Yep.
And if you can get the order in at all. And so a lot of people are buying these tools because they come with pretty handles, and then some of them come with what they call signature series, which are professional carvers, generally from the CCA, that have their name and they're numbered and all of that type of thing, so they become collector items as well, so they're hard to get. So there's Helvey, there's Ramelson, there's OCC Tools, there's Flex Cut, there's, I like Dunkel, Drake, a lot of different manufacturers. Where do you get those? Well, here locally, the stores are Woodcraft and Rockler, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. And let's see. Now, what's the difference between all these tools, of the palm tool, the hand tools, the knives? Well, it's what works for you. A lot of times you're having to order things off of the internet right now, but if that tool doesn't fit your hand, then you're not going to be comfortable carving with it, and you're not going to enjoy the experience. So a lot of different things with that. One of the things that I did not put up on that is chip knives for chip carving. Very short blades, got an angle to them, and because of the way you hold that for the chip carving. And one of the interesting things about a chip carving knife, it's ambidextrous. There's a there's a notch on each side, so whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you can, it's set up for the same knife. I brought a couple of other specialty knives. This one's a hook for doing bowls, rounding out a surface. And then you guys probably have a lot of bench knives that you just use for general things, but that's a big bench knife for making some big things. So that's but the number one thing about knives, and particularly with carving, is you want them sharp. Not just sharp, what's called by some people scary sharp. And this is, we're just going to cover a couple of different methods of carve. This was developed by one of the top chip carvers in the country, but it'll work for almost anything. And it's basically just wet dry sandpaper on a flat board, but it's the process that they use. And they start with their lowest grit, which is 1200, then they go up to 1800, then to 4500, and finish with 8000. So we go up very fine. But to do this, you take the knife and you go nine passes on the one side, turn it over, 9 passes on the other side. Turn it back over, 8 passes. 8 passes. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go to the next grit. Same thing. 9, 8, 7. The next one. 9, 8, 7. Next one. A little time consuming, but scary sharp. Now, you can also use some stones. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Arkansas stones and stuff, and we've got some examples over there. And then here's a picture of my Burke sharpening system. It's a small portable. Steve's getting a bigger one that's on its way.
So, I got it. Got it last couple of weeks ago.
Okay. So the thing about these Burke sharpeners is they're belted and geared down so they don't turn as fast as a motor would or turn as fast as your normal grinder would, so that you don't build up the friction, build up everything. And on it, I have 2 different grits of sandpaper that I use when I really have something terribly wrong with the knife or gouge, and I have to reshape it, rework it. Most of the time, if I'm careful with them, all I have to use is the leather, which is what we call a strop, has a compound on it. There are many different types of compounds, and some people could argue that this one's better than that one, but to me, as long as you use one on it and you use it regularly, I don't care which compound you use. So, and then, whoops, and then it has a buffing wheel to just kind of take the little edges off and clean up the pieces and everything, just to kind of keep it sharp. And here's our hand strops. And we say strop every 20 to 30 minutes. Keep it sharp, keep it going, because you don't want A knife that's not sharp isn't safe, and you're not going to enjoy the process, and you're not going to be able to get the wood out that you want to. And this little one here in the middle, this is for, you got the micro gouges there, Steve?
Yep.
These are for little bitty gouges, and so they're pretty hard to, they're so small it's hard to do much with, but when you've got something like here that has the ridges and the V's and that you can go in and out of. So, yeah. We're going to get down to wood. Well, one last kind of statement on the knives and everything. A friend of mine said, somebody asked him, what's the your favorite knife? And he said, the one in my hand. And online and if you see YouTubes, if you see pictures of some of these things are on any of the websites or Facebook or anything, they'll be always what's the knife that I should buy? Well, what are you going to do with it? You've got to determine what it's going to be used for before you can really answer that question. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Most common wood, well, again, you can probably carve about any wood if it's got something strong enough and big enough and everything. Most of what we do is use basswood. Most of the carving is basswood because it's soft, but yet it's strong. It's soft to cut through, but it's strong and will hold and everything. And it's got very little grain. We'll talk about that in a minute. Butternut's another good wood, but it's got more of a grain pattern. Cottonwood bark, we'll show that to you in a minute as well. It's a very different thing. And when you get into power carving, you go into Tupelo, things like that, where work better with power than with hand tools and for fine detail there. Spoons and kitchen utensils and stuff. Fruit woods, apple, cherry, pecan, generally done green, not dried out. Basswood. Why do we use basswood? Because it holds detail, because it's small. Now, the thing is, and there's northern and southern or native basswood, and the thing is about that, and people think that I'm being a wood snob here, but I like my northern basswood because it grows slower, it's more consistent in the coloration, it's more consistent in the grain, I can get smaller details in it, and it generally carves smoother, particularly if you've got a white color to it. If you get your southern or native basswood here, more discoloration. If you look at the grains, and I've got one up here that you can look at how it grows, much thicker, wider growth rings than the northern. Does it carve? Do you make good pieces out of it? Sure you can. It just depends what you want to do with it and how much detail you want. And if you're doing a piece that doesn't have a lot of detail, it works fantastic. And even down to quite a bit of detail. So again, what you're doing with it. Butternut. We've got a piece across here. And the thing on it is, unlike the basswood, you see the grain. And on certain pieces, like this one works out pretty well, and if you come up and take a good look at it, the grain really adds to the piece that you're carving. Unlike the basswood, which you're typically have to paint. So cottonwood bark, you got a piece there, Steve. Now, we're talking about cottonwood bark. Again, I'm going to my North Dakota, I'm going to my north climates. You're probably not going to find cottonwood bark here in Missouri, near the rivers, that size. And so it gives us a lot more room to carve, and it's got a beautiful coloration and everything to it. Okay. Now, let's get into types of carving. Incise carving. This is where I started. Those are the pieces that I started on. Very, very simple. Reading the very beginning books of just outlining what you're trying to do. And just very, very simple, but learning to use the knife, learning how to make corners, how to go around, how to make V-cuts, how to do all those types of things. And then we moved on to relief carving, which is, okay, this is one of my next ones that I did. And again, going around the flower, but now we're digging in. We're giving the flower more depth, more substance to it, and now we can add detail and give it some ins and outs and see the petals kind of curve and those types of things. So, but now we went to a bigger, more detailed relief carving. Now I'm seeing a lot more. And the other thing is, to me at least, particularly when you've got a good light on this carving, that post looks like it's coming right out of that carving. I mean, that post looks to me like I can reach out and grab it. So that's what we can do with the, this obviously was not my first relief carving. But as you look at this, and you look at the relief carving, now we're getting into more depths, more levels. And you see the woven wire there, and you can see how it looks like that wire is wrapping around the other strand of wire, and it's separated from looks separate from the background that it's actually on, even though they're touching each other. And then here, if you look very closely, right there, and you can come up and look at it, and on the other side of the post, that piece of wood actually comes out in free air, that strand of wire. So there's actually an air gap between that wire and what's behind it. Carving in the round, and now terminology that I keep harping on everybody about is rough out and cut out. A rough out will look something like this, and what it is some carver, some professional usually, has made something like this. They've either went to a duplicator or went to a company that has a CNC, and at a group of anywhere from 2 to 24 at a time, they've followed what that original was, and leaving room for carving, went around it and cut that out, and getting all the waste wood away, so you don't have to start with a plain block that's this big. Now, what's the advantage to that? You can start on the details. You can do these types of pieces without having to have a lot of bigger equipment that we'll talk about in a second with, for doing cutouts. And for an instructor, then he can have all of these lined up that he's done before many, many times, and he can get a group of students and go around and teach his method and teach them how to do his style of carving. Now, you see these two Santas. Finished everything. Can you tell which one's the rough out, which one's the cutout? I can, but most of the time you can't. I can because I know which ones what I did them from. But the biggest difference of how you could tell a rough out on that particular one, at the bottom, there's some marks on it, just like would be on a where the machine was holding it, just like would be on a lathe. So now there's realistic animals, and we've got some shown up here. Same type of thing, but the thing about doing a realistic rather than caricature or just something that looks like it, when you do realistic, you need to make it look, you need to follow the structure of the animal, the anatomy, and all those types of things, which I did on the bison and on the horse. And this is what, this is a rough out that I started the horse from and the finished horse. And with a horse, when we do realism, on a horse and most animals, the head determines all of the rest of the length of the bones, lengths of the musculature, all of those types of things, and has to be in proportion. Realistic humans, same type of thing. I find that a young female face is the hardest thing to do because the young female face is nice and smooth and everything. Well, carving is a lot about shadows, so you can see what the carving is. So a wrinkly old man like me, a lot easier to carve because you can put all these wrinkles in and give it character, where young lady that's smooth, much different. Now, what's the opposite of realistic? Caricature. Okay? This is a caricature. Now, what makes that caricature rather than realistic? The things are, certain features are exaggerated. Those hands are obviously larger than what you would normally see on a hand. The head is larger. While the nose and all of the things look like we expect a face to look, they're exaggerated, they're bigger. And, but you keep some of the main things like faces are 5 eyes wide. Did you know your face was 5 eyes wide? It is. And you can go into complete theories and calculations of what makes someone beautiful because of the how those percentages work together. Who cares? Make it look close. We've talked about pyrography. There's all types of things. Pyrography, spoon carving. There's spoon carving for utensils, spoon carving for what they call love spoons for decorative. Power carving, primarily, not totally, but power carving's a lot for bird and fish. There's a little bit of power carving on this dragon, just all the scales and everything. Types of cuts. Stop cut is just what it says. You're going to go down into the wood so that when you come the other direction, it's going to be a stop. You're not going to split into the wood. You're not going to go further than you want to. It makes you paring cut, kind of like you're peeling an apple or something. Slicing cut is what we try to use a lot of. You hold it, you position your sporting with your thumb, and you use a lot of wrist. It's easier, more control, and you're going to be able to carve longer than with the push cut when you're just going straight and trying to. So, what do you need to get started? Glove, knife, piece of wood, and your safety equipment. Cheapest hobby around. Now, I kind of neglected to talk too much about the cutouts. Now, cutouts, I can do similar type of thing as the rough out, but now I cut this out on a bandsaw. Now, probably a lot of you, or probably most of you, have a bandsaw. Not everybody does. Not everybody has the room and location and everything for that. And so that's where I think, and that's where I started, is doing a lot of things that were from the rough outs, because I was limited to what I could do as far as the tools and machinery I had at the time. So I didn't have the big bandsaw, or I did have a scroll saw, but then I had to keep my pieces pretty small. So finishing carvings, it's like that's a whole separate skill set into itself. A lot of, just like you have a lot of different methods for your finishings, for staining and all of those types of things, sealing, so do we for painting. Probably the typical for most of the Santas and most of these types of things are acrylics. We typically dilute them down so that make it into a wash, so they're not a real strong color, and that we can blend them together. If you look at that, well, both of those, but particularly the one in Steve's right hand there, that has a lot of different colors in it if you really look. And that was a bit of a wet on wet acrylic, which is a little bit unusual, but it blends some burn umber at the edges so that those dark areas around the fur, the hat, the different things, they're darker because they have some different colorings in there, and then they blend their way out to the reds and everything. And it's just a nice looking method. Some are just kind of straight washers. This relief carving was a wet on wet watercolor. Required keeping a lot of water going and different, had clean water, dirty water, mixed water, and a lot of things to be able to blend those colors together, but it gives it, that field looks like a field that's not just one flat color. It's got yellows in it, it's got greens in it, it's got all kinds of different things in it. So where to go for additional help? Of course, online there's all types of videos. One of the prominent ones is Doug Linker. There's several others. International Association of Woodcarvers. There's Woodcarving Academy, which I like Woodcarving Academy. It's got some of the top instructors in the country, if not in the world, instructing there. It's done by Zoom classes. Does have a higher cost to it, but there's books, there's shows. We have the Midwest Artistry in Wood, which will be coming up in October this year in Belleville, and they have, if you've seen on Channel 2, they had one segment on the show coming up, and they, from the Midwest Woodcarvers out of Belleville, they presented that segment. The St. Charles Woodcarvers Club will present the next segment that for them on Channel 2, and don't know, have a date on that yet. And then West County will present one later in the summer. And so that's so this is about their show. Go back to, we got two clubs represented here tonight, St. Charles Area Woodcarvers and the West County Woodcarvers. So we've got some business cards for us. Do you have anything? Any? Okay. But you can go online and find their information. So one of the great things about a wood and craft show like we'll be in Belleville is great place to purchase carvings, but also there will be tool vendors, tool suppliers, sharpeners, all types of things that we go as carvers to see what's the newest and latest, greatest tool and what's missing from my toolbox that I can add to. You never have that, you never do that, do you? No. So, and plus it has a judge show for all levels, so you can, they have a judge that goes through and judges these things and picks out the best, and then also will often give you critique on that so that you can improve your work. St. Charles Club, all welcome to newbies to experts. We have monthly club projects which we work on, and for very nominal fees we provide the wood and training and help for everybody to do those projects. We also have, we bring in help, we have instructional classes by known woodcarvers. We're bringing in Wayne Larimore in May. He's a caricature carver of America. It's a limited number of members that are active members in the Character Carvers of America. There are only 25 active members at any one time in the Character Carvers of America, and so they are basically the top at promoting character carving. Then in September, we're bringing in John Engler from Springfield, and this is the type of carving that he does, medium relief. This is where I learned it from John. Great gentleman, and so we're bringing those things in. We have a library, books and DVDs that can be checked out by our members. We do the charities, which we talked about a little bit, that Valerie is working out, and then we have our website, and we're working on a Facebook page, but it's not quite there yet. And we have coffee and snacks every night, and we meet every Wednesday night, 6:30 to 8:30, and sometimes it's a meeting, sometimes it's open carving. And doors open at 6 o'clock. And the West County group meets the first and third Monday nights from 6:30 to 8:30, and meetings at 7 o'clock, and Steve and I are also members over there, so we get to go over there and bother them as well. So, but they have some once a month they have carvings on Saturdays, and we just did a carving last Saturday, and they fussed at me because their hands got tired, but that's okay. What did I miss?
Didn't miss anything. One thing I would like to say is that if you are interested in carving, before you go to some store like Rockler or Woodcraft, and you go in there and tell them you're interested, because they will sell you everything you would need for years. Okay? Come to the club. Come talk with us. Don't do what I did, because that's what I did. I went there and bought all kinds of stuff and then found out I didn't need most of it. Come to the club.
And bought a little wood, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I bought about $500 worth of wood, and it was unfortunately southern basswood that he was talking about you don't want to buy. So if anybody wants some, I got some. Come to us. We will help you get started. We'll explain to you. We've got people that will work with you, help you at any of our meetings. It's free to come. If you want to join us, it's a very expensive charge of $10 a year. Okay? And that allows you to come to all of our training sessions where we bring in the experts to help you out. So
and we always have beginning projects. I mean,
Yes.
I know Steve and I both have little boot projects. If somebody comes in that it's never carved
we'll get you
before,
started right away.
we can get you started. We've got safety equipment for you. We've got knives that you can use, and we get somebody going first time they come in.
So please feel free to join either our group, the West County group. We're always there to help whoever wants to come in and carve. Okay? It'll save you some money from doing some of the things some of us have done to get started. Because really, all you really need to get started carving, glove, thumb protection, and a knife. That's really it. Yes, you can go crazy and you can buy all kinds of knives and all kinds of gouges and micro gouges. I did all of that. And you can spend a lot of money doing it, but it's not necessary.
And
glove, thumb, and a knife. That's pretty much what you have to start. Wood. You're right. But we'll provide you with some wood to start with. so you can get started. We'll even give you a little project. Okay?
Okay. Questions?
Yes, hi. How many members are in your guild or in all of the guilds combined? Do you have head
We're at
counts?
about 25.
Yep.
And you're at 35?
35, yes. And the Belleville Mid-America Woodcarver is, I think they're about 50 or 60.
Oh, wow, that's a big one.
But we're really, one of the things that I'm seeing together, and Larry and I talk about this often, we're not just being separate clubs, we're working together. We're trying to, because at 25 and 35 we can do a lot, but we can do a lot more at 60. You know, when we're together we can, yeah. You know, so we can, so that's what we're trying to work together and help each other out and let everybody grow. So.
Got a couple questions for you here. Is the rough out piece, what's a typical price that you would buy one of those for?
I mean, as you would expect, they range anywhere from a really small piece or say a small ornament like one of your ornaments that you had there, Steve. That might be $3 or $5, and a board for like this will be 40 to 50. These will be 25 to 40, and if you go into some of the bigger stuff that you do for with the full size, those will be 40 to 60. And I've seen one that was a big mirror frame that one instructor had, and that one was like, and it had a lot of intricacy and everything, and I think it was like $120.
Question was, you mentioned wet on wet painting.
Yes.
Can you give us a minute or two on that?
Okay. The wet on wet is basically most of the time when you paint something, particularly if you're painting your house or something and you're painting two different colors, you want the one to dry before the other dries so they don't bleed across. Wet on wet, we want the opposite thing. We want them to kind of bleed in and give us some extra coloration and everything. Have you ever seen the Bob Ross painting shows? Okay? Bob Ross is oil wet on wet. And so that they blend together. So this isn't to that extreme because watercolors is going to dry fairly quick, unlike the oil colors. And the horse and the bison or oils drives me crazy because it takes me about 2 weeks to get one of those painted because it takes so long for everything to dry, and then I put multiple layers and colors on them and everything. So it's just a method of blending colors. Does that help? Larry.
West County Woodcarvers show this September 16th from 10 to 4 at Salem and Baldwin United Church of Christ, next to the United Methodist Church of Christ, next to the fire station in Baldwin on Manchester Road. Also, the Mid-America Woodcarvers from Belleville, their Artistry and Wood Show is October 28th and 29th this year. So, and it's also, they've changed the price to get in the West County show is free. The Midwest Artistry and Wood Show is $5, I think, for adults, and under a certain age, I think, is free for the kids.
I'll bring out a flyer if anybody wants to look at that. I've got one with me. Any other questions, comments?
Gentlemen, thank you very much.